I don't know. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Usually, like, I don't usually need the mic, but even when people are presenting, like, I'm going with this close knit of a crew. We're going to be able to hear just about any speaker without that mic. Do I at least look pretty?
You look great. Yeah, we're good.
We're good?
Yeah, we're goodish, yeah.
Good?
Not as good as we're good.
Awesome.
Man, you look good from over here.
So at distance, got it. Welcome to DenverScript. What's up? Better be that mask, yo. Thank you everyone for wearing your masks. Really appreciate it. Helps the spread, or helps the spread? Helps reduce the spread of that damn Delta variant and its new morphed brother, or whatever the hell it is we're at now. Sorry for the delay. Guillermo here has been hard at work getting us a proper streaming setup, so this is going to look super awesome. So I know a lot of people, it's hard to get here. We want to continue the live stream, but we want it to be of higher quality. So hopefully this will look like as sweet as like those, really cool conference talks, little head in like the corner while the slides are up there. So if you don't feel like you can make it in person, hopefully that will be a much better experience going forward. So thank you, Guillermo, for doing all that hard work. Woo! And we're only like 10 minutes late for like getting this started. So like that's actually really good for a brand new setup. So thank you to our sponsors, CoTalent. That's the venue that you're sitting in right now. Thank you for sponsoring the venue and the booze. They're a talent agency, so if you're looking for a job or looking to hire someone, talk to them. They've gotten me probably 3 jobs now in my career. They work with some really awesome companies, including Aetna, who I work for. So thank you, CoTalent. Tonight's schedule. Of course, you get to listen to me blab on about intro, job, announcements, and what's going on in JavaScript land. Next, we will have a short presentation. Christophe will be talking about cross-site scripting and the dangers that lurk beneath. And then our longer presentation, we have Francis, also from Aetna. Cool place to work, yeah. He will be talking about machine learning in JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and he submitted 2 talks, and I couldn't remember which one was tonight. So, we are an open collective, which means we are a nonprofit, and it is very important for us to get some donations, or else this comes out of our pocket. Like, we actually are paying out of pocket for, $300 setup so we can do better live streams. So, people, if you can please donate, even if it's $5, like that goes a long way with us. We would really appreciate it. If you want to find links to anything from our meetup, if you go to DenverScript.com, it's basically a link farm to all the things we have, our YouTube channel, Open Collective, submitting a talk. Feel free to do so. I just explained what an Open Collective is. Nonprofit, donations, cover expenses. Cool. So what's going on in JavaScript land?
What's going on in JavaScript land? So I kind of goofed this one. Normally I do what's going on with the latest Chrome updates. I was so focused on trying to make sure our stream setup got set up that I didn't do any Chrome updates this time around. I will say one thing though. I'll tell you what I'm excited about. It's usually like a scripted thing, right? Because it's like there's a new DevTools release, so I go through the new features in DevTools, right? So it's kind of like every time it's like, okay, it's gonna go down a features list. But I'll tell you what I am actually excited about that I've been messing around with a lot. That's been really cool. Is here, Matt. Do an inspector on the page that you're on. This is actually an older thing. It's been around for a while, but it's what I'm excited about. So go to inspect. And then go to the, make that, once you, great. Grab any one of the DOM elements on there, right click it, and then go to copy, and then do JS path. And so now what it's done is it's copied a JavaScript path to that element. So if you go to the terminal, go to the console, sorry, and then so that's quite simple. It should be like let whatever, like let something equals that, paste it, and then now you have a variable, like exactly, so you can now you can do whatever. You can you can change the inner text, you can do whatever you want. And so like if you need to well, I don't know what we grab. Like this is totally on the fly here, but the cool thing is that like
JavaScript.
you can get a variable designation to anything, any DOM element on the page, and then from there you can then mess around with it. So I've been working on a product right now. I've been doing some freelance work and been needing to do a lot of like very imperative DOM manipulation, right? Where we're looking on the page and we're trying to like look at every image tag on the page, and then from there do some work on those image tags, right? And so with doing this, we literally can just like cycle through the images, and then when I'm doing like my testing here, I can actually grab a path to it and then move the stuff around and change things imperatively, like the same way that I'm gonna do the code when I have like the variable in hand. So anyways, so that's been around for a bit, but it's a really, really cool way to be able to work with JavaScript off of literally arbitrarily any DOM element on the page as you're debugging and working through it. So I think we actually probably last year, I remember when we first covered that, and then so like in my head I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing, and then that's how I was playing around with that. But yeah, so that's what I was excited about this month. I've been using that a lot, and it's been really, really handy. What are you guys excited about? Anything at all? And so what we always say is this can be something that is as high level as like software development in general, or it could be like changes and updates that are going on to the JavaScript language, or it could be new things going on with the framework that you work with, or it could be something like as low level and not even new necessarily, kind of like that, where I just like, there's this tool that's been around for a while that I was just excited about and working on it this month and wanted to share it with you guys. So those are what we call kind of like high five moments, like things that aren't necessarily new, but they're new to you and you're excited about it. So what are you guys excited about? Anything at all? Oh, and I should be checking in the chat too.
I'm not there. There's no one.
Great. It's great. The one time we had like a decent stream, because the other times we've been streaming it, it's just been like horrible. It's just been like my webcam like pointed at here and you can't even see anything. So
Still have like 10 people.
Why don't you guys give me a couple things, like anything at all from what you're working on this month that you're excited about? It could be like a gnarly bug that you fixed, or a new framework that you just learned how to use, or a new like set of tools that you started working with. Yes.
I've been working with a framework called Istio.
Called what?
Istio.
Istio?
Istio.
How do you spell it?
Istio.
Okay, yeah, I would have never gotten that anyway. All right. Istio, okay.
It's
Wait, what?
It's basically a service mesh for containers.
Okay.
And yeah, I've just been working with that a little bit, getting to know it a little better.
By containers, you mean like Docker containers, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And so what's your favorite thing about it?
Out of the box, it provides a lot of functionality. You get mutual TLS. Basically, you have service discovery. It's very robust, basically. So
Nice.
I like everything that it can do. It's just very, very, very robust.
Cool. And if somebody wanted to learn more about it, like how did you get up to speed on it? Is it just, are their docs really good, or is there a course that you took, or some tutorial you found?
The docs are good, and yeah, if you do Google searches, you're gonna get tons of, tons of posts and articles on it. So
Sweet.
Are people gonna hear you from there?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They might actually hear him too. I have it, so the cool thing about the Yeti mic is it has like 4 different settings, and I have it set to like everywhere mode. So it kind of like hears everyone, so that's cool.
Nice.
You can also set it, if you're doing like a podcast, you can do that it picks up only you. So I'm also excited about that. That's what I'm excited about this month too. So we finally have a streaming set up for no one apparently, because nobody's actually watching. So what else are you guys excited about? Yes.
I've been working with, or I've had the opportunity to work with Framer Motion.
Okay.
Putting some animations together for the product I'm working on. It's been a lot of fun, a nice change of pace from microservices.
Framer Motion?
Framer Motion, yeah, it's just an animation library.
Oh, cool. And then similarly, like, is it just like they have their own docs and tutorials
It's
that
not
are good?
new though.
What's that?
It's not new.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
But similarly though, like,
New to you.
how did you get up to
Yeah.
speed with it?
The docs are good. They've got a lot of live examples that are actually up to date. And
Yeah.
pretty thorough, yeah.
Sweet. How many people are new here, by the way? How many people is your first time? Sweet, that's awesome. We always get almost exactly 50% every time. So yeah, for those of you that like Matt was just saying, because I get to recycle my jokes every month, and half of you think it's new, right? So seriously, what I always say is like, for this part here, kind of like what you were just talking about, right? Like, it's like those old like CBS reruns, right? Where like if you haven't seen it, it's new to you, right? So like, if something's new to you and you just discovered it, then cool. You know what I mean? That's awesome, right? Like then you're, what?
Did you say CVS?
CBS.
CBS?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said CVS.
No, I get it. You're
Got
just
it.
like your overlords have like drilled into your brain that any acronyms even close must be them.
What's that, Master?
Yeah, exactly. Let's do 2 more. Yes.
Next.js had
Yeah.
a conference today. They announced a new version that they have a bunch of new features. Basically, just go like watch the keynote. But a couple things that are really interesting. It's built to work with React. Is it 18 that's coming up? Whatever the new version with like server components and kind of some of the new stuff there. And then they have a thing called edge functions that's really interesting. It's kind of the next progression in the concept of serverless. It's a little bit different, but basically deploying a small bit of code, essentially in a CDN-like manner, for very minimal like routing logic. So you can, basically do statically generated stuff that's personalized and like dynamically generated and cached at the edge. So it's a really interesting concept to kind of merge server-side rendered and statically generated.
Cool. Sweet. And so you said there's a Next.js conference going on right now?
Yeah, it was today.
Oh, sweet.
It's virtual free, so
Awesome.
still
Cool.
should be up on YouTube.
Awesome, thank you. And that reminds me actually, Matt always does a really good job of like going back through these and like dropping in links for all this stuff. So don't feel like you need to like jot it down or like kind of scramble to find it. We'll post these, or Matt, the royal we, Matt will post these in the comments for the meetup page for today. You had one?
So I'll be doing a presentation on machine learning, and so I've been messing around with basically it's a service for machine learning DevOps
Okay.
called spell.ml.
Spelled out what?
ML.
ML.
Yep, for machine learning.
Okay.
It's a cool tool. A lot of machine learning stuff that you find online is like Python scripts and things like that. So basically, this will allow you to run those Python scripts on cloud infrastructure if you want to train models, rather than on your computer, which is much slower. So.
Right. Awesome. Sweet. And then similarly, like I've asked everybody else, are there docs, is that how you got up to speed on it, or were there certain tutorials or courses that you found that were helpful?
There was a tutorial that I found by a YouTuber called Coding Train.
Coding Train on YouTube?
Yeah,
Okay.
Coding Train on YouTube.
Sweet.
And so they have a spell on machine learning and JavaScript. So it's
Awesome.
pretty useful.
Awesome. I love your sweater, by the way.
Thanks.
Publix, man. Gotta represent. For those that can't see it at home. Yeah, Pubs. Oh, yeah. There you go. People from the southeast know what's up.
Oh, Florida.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Does anybody have any others? Going once? Going twice? Alright, well, thanks, everybody. JavaScript land. Nailed it.
All right. Does anyone have any job announcements they'd like to announce? Please.
Hey guys, you want to put
Yeah, if you just want to come up to the front, then that way.
the stream, I suppose? Oh, I don't know.
It doesn't really matter.
Hey guys, Michael. I am the technical lead at Star Atlas, and we're building a video game. It is based in, like, the core game loops are territorial conquest, resource gathering and refinement, and like space combat, kind of like an EVE Online style MMO. The cool thing is that every single item in the game, or everything in the game from resources to ships is an NFT or it's a cryptocurrency token. What this means is you play the game for 8 hours, you might find a really cool item, you can sell that for USD or Bitcoin or whatever. So it rewards your time in game for with real money essentially, and it makes it kind of breaking that barrier a little bit, which I think is cool. We're hiring really far across the board right now. Basically all roles. We really need project managers and team leads, but we're hiring web developers, C++, Unreal developers. We're building Unreal 5. No junior roles, unfortunately, at this moment. All of those are taken. And what else? I said Unreal, C++. If you're a Rust developer or no Rust, or have worked with the Solana blockchain before, big plus too. So
Nice.
talk to me afterwards.
Cool. Anyone else have other jobs they want to announce? I don't specifically have any job openings, but I know Aetna always has openings for literally just about everything. So feel free to always reach out to me if you're interested, or just go on their careers page and take a look around. See if there's something you like. Code of conduct, be excellent to each other. Pretty easy things to get around. Invite others to chat, and our speakers work really hard on these presentations, so please no statement questions like, well, here's what I think and I would have done, or belittling their content. Not cool. Full code of conducts at DenverScript.com. Like I said, link farm, it's great. Call for speakers. We're always looking for speakers. Please feel free to hit up Mike, Guillermo, or myself on your Denver Devs, the Meetup website, Twitter. There's just, I'm sure, plenty of ways you can probably even find my phone number and text me. That is it from me. And we get to try our first computer swap now.
Oh yeah, well this is gonna be real fun.
So first speaker tonight is Christophe on cross-site scripting and how it can be scary as hell.
While he's getting set up, feel free to get another beer, use the restroom, get some water.
All right,
For
so how
people
do I do
that
this?
don't know where the restroom is, there's two of them, one on each side of the kitchen.
Pretty good joke, huh?
To DenverScript, and the main reason is because I recently moved to Denver in the first place, so I didn't get a chance to attend before. So thank you for having me here, and hopefully you learned something helpful from my presentation. But my name is Christophe Limpalair, and I'm the founder of a company called Cybr.com, Cybr.com, which is basically just an online cybersecurity community with training resources. Right now we have about 40,000 students. We've only been doing this for about a year. So we're trying to build a really nice beginner-friendly community of cybersecurity resources, including free and paid training material. So my background is actually in web development. I got started with desktop applications, and then I switched over to web development, especially backend, and I absolutely loved it, so I just kept doing that. I've also got a lot of experience working in the cloud, mostly AWS, building applications there, architecting applications there, and then eventually teaching people how to use AWS Cloud, how to build applications on AWS Cloud, but also how to secure their resources on AWS Cloud. And then this is a picture of me hiking Mount Bierstadt. Like I said, I just moved to Denver, so that was a pretty big accomplishment for me. I've been telling everybody for the past 3 weeks just because I can't believe I didn't actually die. So that was great. Thank you. So I'm going to blow through XSS pretty quickly because I only have 10 minutes, and this is a really big topic, so I'm going to talk very quickly. If I skip over things, if you have questions at the end, please don't hesitate to flag me down. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or provide additional resources. I also have some links at the end. But when I talk about web application security vulnerabilities, I get different kinds of reactions, but one of the interesting reactions I get, especially from IT and cybersecurity veterans, is that I've heard of SQL injections before, I've heard of XSS attacks before. They've been around for so long, how could that possibly still be an issue? And so when I get that question, especially about XSS, I like to pull up this chart behind me here, which represents the total bounty amount by weakness type pulled from a company called HackerOne.com. If you've ever heard of HackerOne.com, they're a bug bounty platform, so essentially any company, large or small or medium, can open a private or public program on HackerOne, and anybody around the world can apply to those programs, and they can basically hack those websites or web application resources for a bounty in return, as long as it's a good report, right? So they might find XSS, they might say, here's what I can do with this XSS, and if it's a critical vulnerability, they can literally make thousands of dollars. And so the reason I pulled this up, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more on it, is because in 2019, so this is from 2019, they haven't updated it for 2020 yet, but in 2019, just on HackerOne.com alone, companies paid out over $4.2 million just for XSS vulnerabilities alone, which is mind-blowing. And these are not just small companies, they're also very large companies with very deep pockets, with actual dedicated security teams, and you're still finding XSS types of vulnerabilities on their platforms. A very recent one from May of this year was on GitLab, actually, where they ended up paying a $16,000 bounty to this one individual security researcher who found a stored XSS vulnerability in Markdown on GitLab.com. And again, this was literally this year. GitLab is very well funded. They just IPO'd for billions of dollars. They have amazing engineers. We're still finding XSS on their platform. So the point that I'm trying to make is that no matter how large or small the company is, even though this is a very old vulnerability, it's still extremely relevant in 2021. It's still paying over $4 million in total bounty awards on just HackerOne alone. And of course, I had to throw in the Pornhub program on there. I don't know how you stay focused long enough on that program, but anyway, apparently some people figured it out. But now that I've kind of set the stage for the fact that XSS is still a major problem, even though it's an old vulnerability, I kind of want to go through what XSS is in the first place. That way, if you've never heard of it before, or if you've heard of it before, but you're not quite sure what it is, I don't get you on the same level playing field. If you've heard of what it is before, if you're familiar, then stick with me. We're actually going to talk about some of the impacts and then some of the defenses that you can implement in your JavaScript code, or really any code, web application code in general. So nowadays, most applications use dynamic elements, right? Most of you are probably JavaScript developers if you're here, so you already know this. You're using it to pull stuff into the web page. Like, let's say you have an e-commerce website such as this one, and you're pulling in products from a database. Maybe you're adding a newsletter sign-up form, like you see at the bottom there, where maybe it says, hey, you can get discounts if you give us your email form, right? As a developer, when you're developing, say, the newsletter form, you have this happy path in mind. You're thinking, okay, people are going to use this in order to subscribe with their valid email addresses. So the happy path user flow might look something like this. Again, you have the newsletter sign up, they click on register, and then maybe it sends them to a different page. I'm using a GET request here. It'd probably be a POST request, but just because I want to show the URL parameters, I chose a GET request. So it's sending them to a sign up endpoint. You have an email URL parameter, and you have my email, Christophe@Cybr.com. And then maybe the JavaScript on the second page is reflecting that email back to the user, right? It's grabbing the user, the email they submitted, and it's displaying it back, and it's saying something like, hey, be on the lookout for these great discounts, Christophe@Cybr.com. But now imagine that, again, you're a web developer and you've been tasked by your manager, your team, or whoever to implement some kind of really cool script on that page. You'd go in the source code, you'd modify it, you'd create your cool script, and that cool script could be anywhere on that page as long as the browser is able to read it, as long as it's properly formatted, as long as the HTML is properly formatted. The browser will execute it on behalf of the user because it's valid JavaScript. The problem with this is, as an attacker, you don't actually have to have access to the source code, as shown in this example, to do the exact same thing. And that's where XSS can come into play. So as a very basic example, this could be considered an XSS payload. In this very basic XSS payload, instead of following that happy path, I'm not using an email address. I'm just putting in my name, and then I'm closing an h1 header tag. I'm opening a script tag. I'm adding just a basic alert of 1, and then I'm closing the script tag. Same exact scenario and path. I click on register. I get to that URL endpoint. This time, instead of displaying that email, I'm reflecting back what the user submitted again, which means in this case, I'm only reflecting be on the lookout, comma, Christophe. So where did the rest go? Well, that's the problem. If you don't properly encode and validate the user input, and this can be input on virtually any single web application page, then an attacker can actually inject their own scripts without even having access to that source code repository, which is obviously a major problem. They could be sitting at their living room, injecting this, and infecting potentially millions of users, especially if it's a website like Amazon, Facebook, etc. They could infect all the people that visit that website or click on a specific URL that's been crafted by a malicious actor. In this case, all you're really seeing is this alert box, and hopefully I'm not blocking that for the live stream, but all you're really seeing is an alert box with a number 1, which is a very pointless exercise. An attacker would never do that. That would just reveal what they're doing. But the reason that we use this mostly in the industry, even though it's not practical, is because it's visually appealing. You can see what I'm talking about. You can see that there's an action and a result. But the problem is, especially if you're submitting these bug bounty reports, or if you work in a team and you want to stress the impact of XSS so that your manager takes it more seriously or the organization as a whole takes it more seriously, let's look at some actual real impacts of what you can do with XSS. One of the biggest ones you could do is straight up steal tokens or session information. JavaScript, as you all know, is an incredibly powerful language. Browsers are incredibly powerful. Every single day they get more features, as we were just talking about. And so JavaScript can oftentimes tap into those features, tap into the power of browsers. And so if they're able to get tokens or sessions, you can literally just hijack that user's account, right? Even if you can't get tokens or sessions, you might be able to steal emails, usernames, or passwords. And then you can generate those tokens or sessions on the fly, or you can manually log in, get credit card information, and so on and so forth. You could also redirect users to a lookalike website. So you could create a phishing page. The domain's completely different. Maybe the user doesn't realize that change happened. You send them elsewhere. You have a login form. They type in their credentials thinking they're still on the same website, and bam, you log that on your server and you have access to their account. Or you could also modify content on the page. Again, you're talking about JavaScript. Anything you could do in the source code, for the most part, you could also try to do through an input field, for example. You could create a fake login form again. Or in a much more nasty type of attack, you could try to install persistence in browsers. This is getting harder and harder to do, thankfully, because especially with Chrome, Firefox, and Edge, they're getting a lot smarter at preventing this from happening. But a lot of organizations, especially large corporations, are still rocking old Internet Explorer and things like that. And so with those older versions that don't have these kinds of security features that are common nowadays, you could hook into their browsers, you can persist, and then you can keylog when they're going to banking websites or install malware, turn on their webcams and stuff like that. So XSS is not only very common still, it can be an extremely nasty type of vulnerability given the right circumstances. So as I need to wrap up this presentation so I don't go too much over, I want to talk about some defenses that you guys can start applying as you walk away. There's different layers, right? You could talk about firewalls, you could talk about browser security, things like that, but I'm going to focus on application level just because we're all developers here. So talking about the exact same payload, the exact same scenario, except this time I'm going to add 2 things to my code. The first one I'm going to add is validation. Validation's great. I'm sure you've all heard of validation before, right? This doesn't look like an email address at all. It's supposed to be an email address. If it doesn't look like it, kick it back. Don't even process it further. Just send it back to the user and say, hey, this is not an email address. Fix your email address or I'm not processing your request. Validation's great, but by itself, it's not enough. Somebody's going to outsmart you. I hate to say it. Somebody would outsmart me if I try to validate just for emails. They'll find some special characters they can sneak in there to make it look like a valid email when in fact it's an XSS payload. So the better defense, and something you absolutely cannot skimp on, is encoding. Problem is, as we'll show in a minute, encoding can get a little tricky with applications. So I've got a few tips, cheat sheets for that, excuse me. But essentially, if you're not super familiar with what encoding is, in this specific case, we're going to grab characters that could be considered harmful or that should not be in those input fields or should not be processed by the browsers themselves, and we're going to turn them into their encoded entities. You can see what that looks like. It looks like gibberish. It doesn't really matter. The computer's going to format it for you anyway. But so in this case, what it's doing is it's telling the browser, this is not JavaScript or HTML you need to execute. This is HTML or JavaScript you need to just show up on the page back to the user as a simple string, as just text on the screen. And so the user would end up just seeing the actual like output back versus it being executed by the browser and in the browser. But like I said, this can get a little bit tricky, and I think this is part of the reason why a lot of times developers skip out on this, or they think they're doing it correctly, but they're actually not. And the reason for that is because with XSS specifically, you have different contexts. What I mean by that is what we just talked about as an example was HTML element context. This could be div tags, span tags, p tags, whatever. But you also have to worry about HTML attribute value context, URL query value context, JavaScript value context, and even CSS value context, because you could actually execute XSS through CSS if you're injecting user input through CSS. So as you're looking at these different types of contexts, you cannot use the same type of encoding, because if you use encoding for HTML elements versus for CSS values, if you use the same one, you're opening it up to XSS attack because it's not sufficient in defending in that specific context. But again, because that gets kind of complicated, because you'd have a lot of rules to try and memorize, which, let's be honest, nobody wants to do, you can rely on free resources that are available in the community. If you've never heard of it, OWASP is a nonprofit organization. I'm not part of them. I'm not, I'm not part of OWASP or anything like that. But I think they're fantastic. I think they have fantastic free resources, especially for web application security. And so I've compiled some of these resources that you can use to understand what context you're dealing with in the first place. But then on top of that, what security mechanisms, including encoding, you have to implement for that specific XSS context. There's also some resources for testing your code for specific types of XSS attacks. So there's 2 different links here for reflected and stored, and then one for DOM XSS. Don't worry, these links are hideous. I know that. I don't expect you to type them out or take pictures or anything like that. You can literally just go to cybr.com/DenverScript, and it's a link tree that will have all these resources on there. That way you can just further your reading and keep going and learn more about XSS. Sorry, I know I went through it quickly. Hopefully you gathered some information from that. And if you have any further questions, I'll be around here. I'm going to stick around, or you can reach out online. I'll be happy to answer any questions. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
We can take a few questions now.
Okay, cool.
So, anyone have questions?
Yeah.
What's the most malicious thing that you've seen as an outcome of cross-site scripting attack?
So I haven't seen this for a very long time, but the browser hooking one is pretty nasty. There's actually entire frameworks built. There's a popular one called Beef, if you're interested in looking that up, like literally spelled B-E-F-F. B-E-E-F, sorry. And so with Beef, if you're able to find an XSS vulnerability, they have a hook that they give you, and you fire that hook through the XSS payload. And as you hook onto their browser, then you can run other modules. You can build your own modules. They have, I think, 100+ modules already built or something like that. And so through those modules, you can literally try to control the browser, download malware, and so on and so forth. That's probably some of the nastier stuff. But if you go on hackerone.com and check out their hack directory or hack directory, whatever it's called, where they have publicly disclosed vulnerabilities like that, and you filter by XSS, you can see some pretty nasty ones and some pretty interesting ones on popular websites. Like the GitLab one, that's one that I saw just browsing through. And literally, I think it was, I'm paraphrasing, I might be slightly off, but on commits, if you're trying to comment on commits, if you're trying to open a new issue or something like that, basically anywhere where you had the markdown editor, you could run this XSS and take over the accounts. And who knows how long that's been around. That could have been out for years until this person found it, reported it, and I mean, you're talking about taking over a GitLab account, especially if it's an admin account. You could control the source code of some of the major corporations out there. So yeah, there's a lot of seemingly innocent things you can do with it that can turn into extremely costly vulnerabilities and breaches if you're not careful with it, for sure. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Cool. I have a quick question, if that's all right. Maybe I'll give more time to think too. What, after seeing this talk, right, what would you have rather I focus more on the defense side? Did you already know what XSS was? Like, do you mind giving me feedback on how I can improve it, especially in such a short period of time? Like, what should I focus on more next time, or what would help more?
I think the defense stuff is more interesting.
Okay.
Like, have a fair idea of what it is and what you can do with it, but knowing how to protect against it is interesting. And then also hearing, like, what kind of crazy examples of what, like, I want to know
Yeah.
What's the game there? You know?
Yeah.
And that's could be interesting.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
I think it has enough content to it. This easily could be a long talk.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally.
Yes. Yeah. I had to practice. I kept going over 10 minutes. I'm like, shit. I gotta cut this out, cut that out, cut that out. And so I was a little bit worried that I was all over the place versus focusing in one area. So yeah, that's helpful feedback. But hey, if there is interest, if you guys would be open to a longer talk, I'd be more than happy to put something that's 20 minutes long and kind of dive deeper into it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do we have any slots available?
He's speaking in January.
I don't know. I mean, definitely have slots open.
Yeah.
So if there's interest, I'm more than happy to come back and expand on it more than I did for sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
So next up is machine learning JavaScript with Francis. We still have to connect in our computer, so if anyone needs restroom, base anything, it's about time to do it.
I'm unplugged, so you should be able to just plug in, and then I'll go from there.
Okay.
And then I started seeing it a little bit more and spending more time with it. Yeah. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I grew up like an agency like that.
Okay.
Francis, is that your work laptop?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's to see if it works. I swear to God, anytime it's a computer locked down from a job, I've never had good luck.
Oh shit, I didn't even think about that.
We'll see. We'll see. Just don't worry about it yet.
Yes. Yes. And that's also the thing I try to focus a little more on to NYDS about impact because especially if you look at a lot of stuff our time-based diagnostics and stuff like that, they might find something or an endpoint and then they think, okay, this is enough, I'm going to submit it. But then the company's like, well, what are you going to do with this? There's nothing that you could possibly do with this. And so unless you're able to prove, here's what I can take.
What are your display options?
Exactly.
So it says display connected, mirror displays and extend desktop.
So beyond just finding an issue, actually prove that there's a problem with that. Okay. Here's the effect. Kind of enjoy that bit of it.
Yeah.
Go on. B game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Should I try display options now?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Can't control it.
I'm loving this piece. I'm very glad it's here. So I'm kind of hard around a little bit, but I was recently in Texas for 4 years.
Okay.
So I came from a very flat state.
It's an arrangement.
So yeah, it's a major difference.
Like, no, here's time to do here.
Yeah.
Like, discover.
So yeah, I first heard of
You're not connected, right?
And then a
No,
friend of mine
I'm
was like,
unplugged.
oh, I may do a full
So that shouldn't be interfering at all.
I
That's
just
just
started
like a normal
searching. But then I had a
Well,
friend
it
who
shows
said-
on his laptop that he has a second display connected,
And
mirrored.
he hits me up, he's very athletic. Hits me up, he's like, yeah, I want to hike Mount Pearson.
I don't know.
Yeah, try it.
Okay, let me
Yeah,
try.
Worth a
it's,
try.
okay. The weather was
We
pretty
can
bad.
try and do the same thing, just again, just like moving variables. We can try and here just to see if this works. Try and plug this guy in directly into your dude there.
Yeah. Did you try it before? Did you training or anything? Or just started doing it?
Sorry.
A little more. Let's do this. Oh, right. Hey.
So that will hold on. So now let me try and switch back. Let me see if this works. So.
Should I plug this back in?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
My one of the weaknesses is cardio for sure, so I want to force myself to do that.
No, not up there. It looks connected here.
What's that?
It looks like it's connected.
There you
There we go.
You're good there. So let me do this, make sure it doesn't die. And then let me, last thing is let me plug in here.
Good work. That.
You get extended instead of
Glad I
here.
knew that was a
You had speaker notes.
because otherwise I would have read that probably. Because your heart just beating out of your chest, or out of your neck, feeling pretty crappy to do it. At least I did freak out.
So I hit this slide button, right? Slideshow.
You just need to change displays.
Change displays.
Well, your presentation's up there, your notes are up there.
Okay. How do I switch it? Slideshow. Oh, cool. Nice.
I helped.
All right. Yeah, I'm ready. All right. Howdy, everyone. I'm Francis, and I'm here to talk to you guys about machine learning and JavaScript. I'm a web developer with Etna, and I like to dabble in all kinds of things, and machine learning has been some of the most recent stuff that I messed around in. So my objective here today is to kind of get you guys interested in thinking about different things, the different resources that are available to you, and what you can currently do with machine learning in a JavaScript browser environment. So, what is the state of machine learning in JavaScript? One thing that's great about JavaScript is like browsers are very interactive, and so the fact that you can run models, machine learning models on the browser, you then have access to webcams, microphones, all the keys on your screen, on your keyboard, and this and that. So with that, you're able to export and import already trained models and use WebGL to leverage any kind of hardware acceleration that is needed for rendering things on your screen. And then there's also tons of demos of various use cases of current machine learning models being used on the browser. So, just a quick overview, machine learning in JS. We're gonna go over like the ecosystem, and then I'm gonna go into a demo kind of a web app that I've made using these models, pre-trained models on the browser. And then I'll talk about some of the takeaways I've learned from kind of fiddling around with this and that. So here I go. So there's a ton of different JavaScript APIs that are out on the internet. The most notable of which is TensorFlow.js. If you all have heard of TensorFlow, it's basically Google's framework for working with machine learning algorithms. And so they have a ported version called TensorFlow.js, a different API, so that allows us to take advantage of these models and use them with JavaScript. ML5.js is basically another API built on top of TensorFlow.js to make it a bit easier for just regular developers to use. And they have a ton of examples there, and I think it's a great way for beginners to get started. There are some other services, notable services. One is called Magenta.js. Magenta mostly focuses on like audio, like machine learning in regards to like different audio files and stuff like that, making music. Keras.js is kind of more similar to TensorFlow, which is just a low-level API that you can work with. Synaptic, Brain.js, Dan.js, they're more like reinforcement learning. So, I also listed off some models that are available to us. One is called MobileNet. MobileNet is basically used for like image classification and identification. PoseNet is just another similar model that's used for kind of
taking a video and being able to gather what pose you're in, follow body movements. There's a universal sentence encoder, which does things like sentiment analysis and kind of analyzes text. And then there's KNN classifiers, and that's kind of used for like something called transfer length. So just quick broad overview of that stuff. And so I'd kind of like ask you all to, like, if you're on a computer or if you could pull out your phone, go to this website here, mljs-frankivx.vercel.app. This is basically an app I built using Next.js. I didn't watch that conference mentioned earlier, but I'm gonna keep an eye out. I really like the framework, it's good. And essentially what I did was take a lot of the demos that I found online from TensorFlow or ML5 or Magenta and ported them over to kind of a more modern web development version. So I'll let you guys take a minute to put that in. Everyone there? Cool. So I guess I'll just go into a quick demo of the app. And so initially it was called Style Transfer Lab, but I've added some more stuff other than style transfer into this app. So we'll first go into style transfer. So essentially what you're able to do in this application is upload different images and see if you can transfer the styles. And so, as you can see, I already have 2 images uploaded, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. And then you have a slider here that allows you to adjust how much of the style you want to transfer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit transfer style here.
Still on your slides.
Oh, whoops, thank you. Let's see. It's end show right there. How's it doing? All right. Doing prep for that. All right. Let's see if I can make this a bit smaller.
Is this executing on the client side?
Yes, it is. So all of these examples that I'm going to show you are all client-side models being run in real time. So I hit transfer style. It's going to take a few seconds, but here's what happened. It's not very good, as you can see. Colors are all muddled up. You can barely see the initial image. It's pretty terrible. But fortunately, I've put in other options. So right now, what's been loaded is the performance version. So it's kind of like a distilled version of MobileNet, and same with Com2 2D models. And so I'm going to switch to a more quality model. Now the difference between these two models is when you're on a browser, these models might be like megabytes worth of data that you're sending to the client, right? So there's that kind of limitation where if you're trying to do something that's really like model heavy, it's like a huge model, then it might not be realistic to try and work on the client side. So these quality ones I think are more like 30 megabytes, while the performance ones are closer to like 4 or 5. But there's, I'll show you in 1 second, like the difference there is in quality between these two. And so that's kind of the trade-off that you're going to encounter when you're working with it. So as you can see the color pencil kind of texture has been transferred over to this, the original image. And also like the colors have also transferred. I think one way that we can kind of improve upon this in the future is kind of preserving the color, working on these models to do more in regards to color preservation, because honestly, if I'm trying to do any kind of graphic design or something like that, I love this image right here, this color pencil texture, right? And that's really all I want to transfer over onto this image. And so finding a way to handle that use case, just preserving the color, but actually just moving over the textures, I think will be a practical use of this kind of technology in regards to like graphic design. And I'll just kind of play with the style here. So if I lower the amount of style that's transferred, you can see that it'll preserve more of the color, but also like a little bit less of the texture. So you can see it's a bit more green. You can see this is a bit darker, the branch and stuff. So, and yeah, so this is style transfer. Now, I'm gonna go back home and you can go to the face landmarks detection. So essentially you'll need to enable the use of your webcam. You'll be able to use your phone with this. And as you can see on the screen, it's detecting my face and all of the features and polygons on it. With this technology, you could probably do things like Snapchat filters and stuff like that. It's already been done, but this is kind of where you'd start. You have the mesh that's there, and then you'd render different objects on the screen using that mesh. So you can put like glasses and stuff like that. And here's a little example of kind of just like the rendered points. You can see that it's tracking the irises. You can see that you can very clearly see like my nose, my eyes, and mouth using this thing. All right. So after that, the final one that I put on here is body pics. And so this is kind of, it's used for like analyzing your pose and body position. Right. So as you can see, like in purple is my head. It covers my torso. It knows where my arms are to a degree, and it's going to be in different colors. And there's a legend according to which color responds to what part of the body there is. And it's pretty thorough in how it analyzes it. It can also do more than one person. So if you want to put it in front of this group here, it should be able to kind of pick out. I haven't tested how many people it can pick out, so let's see. I haven't tested the slide yet.
The lighting might not be good enough.
Want to stand up?
There we go.
So there definitely needs to be some fine-tuning involved, but hey, it works. It's a place to get started, right? And so, yeah, those are the three that I want to show you guys. And now I'm going to kind of get into the code a bit, just to show you how I find that most of the difficulty in regards to using this is usually the rendering aspect. That's like the most complicated. Like running the models and stuff like that is pretty easy if you're using the demos, but it's really like getting that mesh to show up on the screen, playing around with the canvas and stuff like that. So here's the code for the style transfer. I've set aside 4 different models here that we can switch between. And do some initialization right here for the models whenever I select them. I only want to load in the models whenever it's been selected. I don't want to have to load in like 50 megabytes of, 60 megabytes of data whenever we run this. And so most of the meat of what's going on is right here. Essentially we take, we're running 2 different models on this, 2 different machine learning models. One is to kind of break down the images, and then the other is to transfer the style. And so right here is we're using StyleNet to predict what the style is and break it down. And then it looks at the style ratio. If it's 100%, then it just kind of continues on, but it does some calculations to kind of reduce the amount of style that's being transferred here. And then here we use the transform net to convert that image from the content element to the screen. And so tf.browser.2pixels basically converts that image to the canvas that I've placed on the screen. One thing that we want to note is when we're doing this, what we have to first do is like we're converting these images from whatever original size they are down to something that's easier to process. So in this, like it's like a scalar 255 by 255 image, and so that's kind of what we're doing here. And so we do that with both of the images so they kind of match, and then it's easier to work with. The larger the image, the more difficult or the longer this style transfer process is going to take. And yeah, that's essentially like the basis of how that style transfer works. And all of this code has been taken from TensorFlow.js, which has a demo, similar demo of this on their repository. So far, are there any questions about style transfer or any of the code I've shown you or anything like that? Or any questions about TensorFlow, JS? All right, I'll move on. So that's the style transfer. Then we can go into the face landmarks. So essentially what I'm doing here is I need to first enable the webcam, of course, and then take whatever video is coming from the webcam and run it through stream it through the model that we currently have. And so that is happening. So render prediction is where all of that happens. Take some stats to look at the frame rate. This is using WebGL to render the mesh that's on the screen. And it basically draws a new image for each key point that it has. And if you can, there's a lot of different settings that you can turn off. So you can turn off the triangular mesh and just leave the key points on. And so you can see the key points on the scatter plot, or the scatter, the spot where you see like the scattergram. I'll show you guys. I forgot what it's called. But essentially this screen right here. So you can see the key points, but it doesn't have the triangular mesh. Yeah, so that's so it's scattergl is what the library is called. And so basically every frame it renders the new lines and the new points on the screen as the stream moves forward. Are there any questions about this? And body pix is very similar. This is actually, it was a bit more complicated transferring over because there's a lot of different steps to this. First analyzing the image and then segmenting the different body parts based upon that, and then drawing each body part kind of on the screen accordingly was a whole thing. But essentially, like using the model was basically like bodypix.load. And as you can see here, these models are available on TensorFlow, just available to use. And I'll kind of quickly just show like all of the different models that are available to us all. So one is MobileNet. You can classify images. So for instance, like this beer bottle here, if I put it in front of a webcam, it'll probably say something like bottle. There's a whole list of like 60 different objects or something like that, about 60 different objects that you should be able to detect. Hand pose is for hands. Pose, there's a bunch of different stuff for images, basically tracking and classification. Face landmark detection was the one with the face mesh that you guys saw. There's stuff with speech commands, the universal sentence encoder, text toxicity, and a KNN classifier. So that's TensorFlow.js. ML5, I mentioned to you guys. This really helped me get started learning. There's a lot of different examples, and it explains how transfer learning works to a degree. And so feel free to check this out. They have additional things like sound classification and pitch detection. here's Magenta.js. This is very focused on like sounds. So you can see things like transformers, drum bots. There's a cool thing that I saw that basically allowed you to kind of play the piano using 8 keys. So it was trained on a data set from like a piano competition. And so it's kind of, if you're playing the 8 keys, it kind of predicts what notes it should play. So it kind of sounds like you're actually playing it. And so here's a great place to get some inspiration if you want to mess around with music and machine learning. And yeah, this is a spell ML, but this is a whole nother thing. I suggest you all check it out if you want to get into like Python and actually training models. It's a really good service if you want to do cloud training on the cloud for machine learning. And all right, so quick takeaways. I don't know how much time I have, but so some takeaways. Machine learning is usually pretty resource intensive. Oftentimes, if you're trying to train a model, you can do it using JavaScript, but I wouldn't advise it. It's not practical if you can save all this time running it on the cloud on a beefy machine, right? So yeah, it's better to train models in the server rather than the client. So when we're using it on the client, we're using pre-trained models that we send. We want to make sure that they're balanced so that you're not sending huge files to them. And the main application is for like real-time stuff, as you saw with the face mesh and body pose. There's a lot more like that you can work with. Any questions?
Yeah, what was your experience with machine learning before going into this? Have you done it before, or was this like?
I haven't done it before, so it was this was my first foray into it. I think it's, at least for me, I'm a JavaScript developer, so it's an easy way to get started. I've definitely learned a lot. There's a lot of research papers and stuff like that out there. What's really cool is the Jupyter notebooks. There's a lot of Jupyter notebooks that run these training models. And so you can kind of do this training yourself on both like the Jupyter notebook, or you can like take those scripts that they run in the Jupyter notebooks and then like put it into spell.ml, and you can kind of do it faster that way with like some actual cloud infrastructure. And yeah, spell.ml, like if you want to dive into that, you can like build a whole pipeline so you can like keep training and stuff. But yeah. Any other questions?
Are there any other projects you're thinking of working on next, like anything that's really captured your attention?
Machine learning related?
Yeah.
I really want to spend more time looking into color preservation for the style transfer. I think so this is just my opinion, but I really hate the vector graphics that has been in web design all this time. I hate it with a passion. And I think it would be really cool if I could I worked on a freelance project called the Bird Genescape project. And I was thinking it's what originally gave me the idea for this is I'd love to take like pictures of birds and turn them into color pencil like sketches. I found a way to do that with a different app. But like machine learning, I was thinking might be also another solution to this. But my main issue that I encountered was there was no color preservation involved in this process. So also another thing, I guess, in regards to style transfer is that it took a bit of time on the browser. I'd probably try to offload that onto the server somewhere to actually run those models. So be a little faster.
Have you used any of these at the work you do at Lambda?
No, I haven't. I have done a presentation, kind of similar, but so a coworker of mine, he basically, for a hackathon project, he messed around with OpenAI and Watson's like APIs for like classification and working with chatbots. So like chatbots is, as a web developer, that's probably like the way to go. Start looking into chatbots. And what he did was, when you ask question about a patient, like pretend you're a nurse and you want to know some of the patient's information, you ask a question. The chatbot will return the answer. It'll have knowledge and context of who the patient is and all the different data that's associated with them. Return an answer, but also return like a diagram with all of the other contextual information that's also associated with it. And I thought it was a really cool project. So if you're looking to make like web apps, that's probably a pretty practical version of what you can do. So. All right. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Francis. Thanks, Christophe, for presenting tonight. Awesome content. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so if anyone wants to hang out, have a beer, nerd out, feel free to stick around. If not, we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Hey, turn on a light.
Have you messed with any natural language processing yet, or not so much?
I did with the universal syntax encoder that was on there, but other than that, no, not really.